Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well and staying healthy. My name is Sharon Garajan and I'm co-president of the Sai South Asia Club. Welcome to Leaps of Faith, a conversation with Ambassador Osman Siddique. This event is being co-hosted by the Sai's Global Security and Conflict Management Club. It gives me great pleasure to invite Dean Cohen to deliver our opening remarks and introduce our panelists for today.
Great. Thank you, Shreya. Let me first and foremost thank the Global Society and Conflict Management Club and the South Asia Society for organizing this event. So much of what's good at SAIS happens when students take the initiative. What I want to do is just introduce our speakers today. So the moderator is someone who's actually very familiar with SAIS, Shamila Chowdhury. Shamila is the president of the American Pakistan Foundation. She's also the Senior South Asia Fellow at the New America think tank here in Washington. And from our point of view, most importantly, a fellow at our own Foreign Policy Institute here at SAIS, where she previously served as a senior advisor to my predecessor, Dean Vali Nasser, from 2013 through 2019. Shamila is an international affairs analyst. She specializes in American foreign policy, particularly focusing on U.S.-Pakistan relations, Pakistani internal politics, and regional issues in South Asia. Her work has appeared in Foreign Policy, Washington Post, New York Times. She's also appeared frequently on CNN, BBC, NPR, Fox, and other outlets. She's written a great deal on American socioeconomic and political issues, including immigration, civic engagement, refugee resettlement, and identity politics. She worked at the political risk firm Eurasia Group from 2011 to 2013, and before that has over a dozen years of experience working for the US government, including serving at the White House as Director for Pakistan and Afghanistan on the National Security Council staff from 2010 to 2011. It's a really distinct honor to welcome our other speaker, our primary speaker today, and that's Mr. Osman Siddique, who is America's first serving Muslim ambassador and chief of mission. Ambassador Siddique was born in East Pakistan, witnessing the violent birth of a new country as East Pakistan became Bangladesh. Seeking the promise and the opportunity of the United States, he left Bangladesh to complete his academic studies at Indiana University in the American heartland. After a stint with a Fortune 500 company, he became an entrepreneur and, most proudly of all, an American citizen. Political service followed, and in 1999, President Clinton appointed Mr. Siddique as ambassador to Fiji, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Nauru. Following the coup in Fiji in 2000, Ambassador Siddique played a critical role in the restoration of democracy and the rehabilitation of that country, and he's now the best-selling author of a new memoir, Leaps of Faith, an immigrant's odyssey of struggle, success, and service to his country. I'm going to hand it off to Shamila, but I just want to say one further word of welcome. I think at this time of all times, Ambassador Siddique, although one should never make anyone's life simply a symbol, but you are a symbol of the things that are and potentially can be great about this country. We're a nation of immigrants, and your achievement is a truly inspiring one. And I'm just so proud and glad to have you with us at SAIS. So with that, I'm going to get off Zoom, and then I'll turn things over to Shamila Chowdhury. Shamila, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dean Cohen. And thank you also to my SAIS family. It's great to be back and engaging with you all. I want to thank the South Asia Students Club for inviting me to this. You've always organized great conversations and events, and just want to give a shout out to Zoya and Faraz, who are proud members of the American Pakistan Foundation family as well. And so the APF-SAIS bonds are strong. So Ambassador Siddique, it's such an honor to have you. You've written this wonderful book, and for the audience, I just want to let them know that we'll start with the ambassador taking about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about why he wrote the book, what he focuses on in there, the main themes, and then he and I will have a conversation. And then around 5:30 or 5:40, we'll open it up to Q&A. And it's so great to see so many people on the line. So I think Dean Cohen aptly kind of messaged this in talking about your life story as an example of what the American story is. And you've really developed this roadmap of the immigrant experience, which is an American experience. And for me to see the contents of your book was really inspiring because, and I mentioned this to you, growing up in the Midwest and wanting to study foreign policy and get into politics, we didn't have too many examples of that. We had lots of examples of success, but in this space, there were few and far between. And so I just want to give you, the recognition and thanks for being a leader for so many of us to kind of follow and aspire to. So with that, why don't we turn it over to you, take some time to tell us about the book.
Thank you so much, Shamila. And of course, I'd like to thank Dean Cohen for his most gracious introduction. I'd also like to thank the organizers of this event. Zoya Sattar has been focused on making sure that everything goes on well. Of course, the Global Society and Conference Resolution Club, the South Asia Society, and all others who are involved in getting together this afternoon and listening to me and talking about my book. Thank you so much. I'm a novice author. I have not written anything in the past. This is my first foray, but I think I tried my best to bring out my life experiences in a credible way, so it can be a roadmap, a footprint for future generations and future immigrants. The power of our citizenship, the power of our Constitution, the power of our common humanity should never be undermined or underestimated. Our past may be imperfect, perhaps riddled with many missteps, but our future in the hands of this new generation, I think, is bright. We have the power. The best thing about America is that we have the power to change course and make changes befitting this great nation. The future is, of course, in the hand of the students at SAIS and other areas. Every immigrant has a powerful story and inspirational. I was fortunate enough to record it and make it available to my friends and family and to any other groups like yours. And I tell you that it took me a little while to get my arms around the whole issue, but the last few years forced my hand. And I wanted to make sure that I record my thoughts, my background in a way that would be helpful to future generations. I start my book more or less during the breakup of East and West Pakistan. It was brutal. It was very hurtful. It was barbaric in a way, and I was witness to that. It was in 1970 when I think most of you were not born yet, and I was at the Dhaka University campus, and I witnessed with my own eyes, the brutality, the killing of the students, teachers, and common people that took place. How I escaped is, I think it's divine providence, but it's all in the book a little bit. But that was the start of the book, and that was the reason why I left that area and came to the Midwest, as Shamila said. I came to Indiana University and finished my undergraduate work and got my MBA. And then, of course, I came to Washington, D.C., where I had some family, but most importantly, I was a capital city guy. I lived in Dhaka. I spent time in Karachi. I spent time in London and Dar es Salaam. So I said, look, and I want to I want to be posted and I want to be located in Washington. Little did I know. And then, I started my work with the Fortune 500 company, and ultimately the American dream, I the bug got hold of me, and I went into the private business. I was an entrepreneur and made a good go at it. But little did I know that if you're in Washington, D.C., there's another thing that can get hold of you, and that is politics. And it's toxic. You breathe the air and you're done. But the good news here is that I had a phenomenal mentor who took me in his arms and guided me. And that was the late Senator Ted Kennedy. He lived in McLean, and when he found out, I met him at an event at the Democratic Party, and when he found out that I was from Bangladesh, because he was pivotal opposing the Nixon administration's policy towards during that war, so he really we befriended each other, and it's a long story, but my cultivation and my indoctrination into politics, especially American politics, was because of Senator Ted Kennedy, for whom I'm eternally grateful, and for his friendship, I'm so proud. The most important thing about then, of course, I got involved in presidential politics. My first vote in my life was in 1988, and I think, yes, it was in 1988 because I got my citizenship in 85, and my first vote was for President George Herbert Walker Bush. I was a friend of the Bush family. Marvin Bush was a very good close friend of mine, and we spent a lot of time. As you'll see in the book, I spent times at the White House, visited the family quarters, ate at their kitchen, all this thing. It was wonderful. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because politics can be divisive today, but it is also so disagreeable. We don't have to do that. You can have friends across the aisle. You can disagree and not be disagreeable. Ultimately, they knew that I was moving towards the Democratic platform, and they made fun of me, but they understood why, and they respected my decision. I joined the President Clinton's election in 1992, but the day he got elected, 3rd of November 1992, my youngest child was born. So there was no question of me doing nothing but taking care of my family, because if there was an opportunity for me to work in this new administration, my wife said it's either Bill Clinton or me, so you pick. So in 1996, I was all in. And I worked very hard in many sectors of the campaign. And then the president asked me to join his administration, and he said that, look, in my second inaugural speech, I mentioned that I want my administration to reflect the face of America. So I'd like you to, from the Muslim community, I'd like you to see if you could become my ambassador. Of course, I was grateful, I was humbled, I was honored. Then he sends me to a country where it's riddled with racist policy, the Indo-Fijians, the ethnic Fijians. So the president told me that you go there and tell the Fijians that America leads the way. When it comes to race relation, America leads the way. So that was a tumultuous time, but they respected our directives. They respected what we wanted to accomplish there. We wanted to restore democracy and the people's voice back in that island nation. And we did so successfully. As a matter of fact, it's a full circle. While I was there, Al Gore lost the election to George W. Bush. And believe it or not, I got a call from the State Department, from Colin Powell's office, that the president wants you to stay on, which is very unusual for a political appointee. The reason was that I was in the midst of putting back together a reconciliation and restoration program for the government of Fiji. So the direction from the White House was that you can stay as long as you need to accomplish your goals, which I did, and I stayed for another through the summer, and then I left. So the bottom line here is this: that in America, if you work hard, you play by the rules, you can reach your goals. And the immigrants have made this country richer through their blood, sweat, and tears. You look at the history of America. My boss, Madeleine Albright, was an immigrant from Czechoslovakia. Previously, it was Henry Kissinger, who was from Germany. The Joint Chief of Staff, John Shelikashvili, was from Poland. So if you are a real American, you embrace the American ideals and values, I don't think anything can go wrong. I got to tell you, right after, I'm transgressing a little bit, but the bottom line here is that the immigrants enriched this country. 100 Nobel laureates who are immigrants in America, people like Fareed Zakaria, people like so many others I can think of, Tesla, people like they were all immigrants. And I got to tell you that if you have the work ethics and you believe in the values of America, I think this is the country that you can survive and do well.
Very well said, Ambassador. So on that note, let's pick up that point. We are a nation of immigrants. At
Correct.
some point in everyone's personal history, our identity and our stories shift to another country. They began somewhere else. And in your case, your family came from what was, before it was Bangladesh, it was part of Pakistan.
And Pakistan, yeah.
Right. And your, diplomacy has roots in your family. It didn't just start with you. It started with you. Your father was a diplomat. And talk to us a little bit about kind of your early exposure to diplomacy and observing your father in the role that he assumed as ambassador of Pakistan during a very tumultuous time. You write about it in the book, and I found it fascinating to read because of the decisions that he had before him that he had to make, and very thoughtfully so, if I might add. So talk a little bit about that influence.
Like me, my father was also a political ambassador. He was an academic. He was the vice chancellor, which is like the equivalent of a president of a university. He was the vice chancellor of Dhaka University. And after he retired, President Ayub Khan said that, I'd like you to be our ambassador to Tanzania. And although he served under President Yahya Khan, and at that time, hell broke loose in East Pakistan. Let me say something. What happened during that time, it was the military junta, along with a group of Pakistani politicians who basically created this mess. And what they did was unworthy of the good people of Pakistan. I repeat, it was unworthy of the good people of Pakistan. But my father had to walk a very tightrope, because all his family members were in distinguished areas of academia and public service in East Pakistan and in West Pakistan. And he was constantly reminded by the military intelligence of Pakistan, of the Pakistani government, that please don't make any wrong move, because we know where they are. In other words, they were kind of a hostage. On the other hand, the president of Tanzania was Dr. Julius Nyerere. And Tanzania had a very close relationship with China, the Tanzam Railway and everything. And China had a good relationship with Pakistan, because Pakistan helped open the China corridor with Henry Kissinger and all those things. So Nyerere said that, look, Mr. High Commissioner, you're most welcome to pull down the flag of Pakistan and leave the country quietly, but we will not allow you to make any statement which is contrary to our relationship with Pakistan and this and that. So he had to walk a very tightrope. Ultimately, before the country became independent, and we lost what we call East Pakistan, he quietly left Dar es Salaam and lived in England for a few years.
And so you then came to New York City first, right?
Yes.
On your way to Indiana, you stopped in New York City, and there's a part in the book where you talk about that, you know, a family friend and his wife had, you were staying with them and they lived in the neighborhood of Harlem.
Correct.
And he was teaching at Columbia University. And this is a really interesting part for me, and it links to what you were talking about earlier about kind of race relations and common humanity. And our idea of America, basically. You saw Harlem and you saw, you know, it was a very different Harlem that we know today, which has gone through a revival. You saw decayed buildings and poverty, ragged faces. And it must have changed your idea of what you thought America was. If you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be, would be something interesting to learn about, given that you eventually became the, you know, one of the top most representatives of the country overseas. What did that do to you?
You know, it's a good question. It's an emotional question for me because before I came to the United States, my picture of America was when I used to read movies, I used to see movies like Blue Hawaii, you know, beautiful people, swinging girls and all those things. And, you know, it was also pretty for me. But I was not naive. I also saw movies like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner by Sidney Poitier or To Kill a Mockingbird. But my thing was that I have to, this is the United States that I envisioned. But when I came to Harlem, you know, my jaws dropped. And I said to myself that, you know, the poverty that I'm seeing here is no different than what I saw, or even worse than what I saw in the streets of Peshawar, because I lived there too, or in Dhaka. And then, but the bright spot was that in one of my touristic mission, I went to see the Statue of Liberty. And then there I saw Emma Lazarus's inscription, and give me your tired, your poor, your mass. I mean, your huddled masses. I mean, I got goosebumps when I saw that. And I tell you something, and I said to myself, yeah, this is not America but I know that America is much more than what it is. And I had a smile on my face, and I said, look, you know, this is what I envisage.
You mentioned that you yourself were a political ambassador and that your father was also, and for the attendees, a lot of them aspire to be ambassadors themselves, and there are various routes towards that. There's the foreign service route, there's also the political appointee route, and regardless of that, what would you tell the attendees are kind of the most important skills that you need as an ambassador, and that you employed kind of in the positions in your work as ambassador to Fiji? You dealt with quite a bit. I know you expected pina coladas, but yeah. You got much more than you bargained for. So what kind of skills are important, and link it to what happened to you there?
You know, I have an old saying, and that is relationships are not made at the time of need. So what I'm saying to you is that as you are studying for whatever you are going to study for, make sure that, you know, you create levels of friendship, levels of relationship at every level, and prepare yourself academically, also philosophically about what you want to do. I think that joining the United States Foreign Service, American Foreign Service, is a noble profession. It's tough because for single people, for people who have a new family, it is tough, but the rewards are much higher than anywhere else you can get. The satisfaction you can get from a job. I mentioned in my book about Lynn Gatkowski. Lynn Gatkowski got her undergraduate degree from Cornell, did her FSI courses, and came as a first appointment to Fiji. She was 24 years old, single girl. And she got a beautiful bungalow on the water with guards and kitchen and drivers and everything. One night during the coup, at midnight, she called me and said, I'm being attacked, and save me. There was a curfew going on. My driver was not there. I took my security, who was armed. I took the keys. I started driving, and I had the horns blazing, lights blinking, flags fluttering. And I went to her place and retrieved her and brought her to the residence. So this is a side discussion, what I'm saying. But to answer your question, I think that public service in any form is a noble profession. And I think people criticize a lot about a government and say, hey, look, this is wrong, that is wrong. Get involved. Either appointed service or elective service. I don't care, but you have to get involved and fix the problem from inside. So if you are prepared for a position in diplomacy, whether it be political or career, just get prepared.
Well, one thing I realized, I spent 12 years working in the US government, most of the time at State Department. And actually, I think I see him. Don Camp is on this call. He's one of my old bosses. So if that's the same Don Camp, hi, Don.
Don is a good friend of mine.
I figured.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of everyone.
Yep.
But in my time, I realized that being in government could only take me so far, that I also needed to know what it was like on the outside, meaning when you work in diplomacy or at the State Department, you need to interact with the private sector. You have to interact with NGOs, with academics, with the media. And you came from a business background, so you kind of knew what the connections were there. What helped you translate your business experience into diplomacy? I mean, what was similar about it? And maybe you could tell us about your business. You had ran quite a successful corporate travel management company, correct? Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I could take from my business life or from the private sector is that you have to have an incredible interpersonal skill. You must know how to react and act with people. Get some humility first, and then make sure you know what you're doing, what you're talking. And as I said, relationships are not built at the time of need. Build relationships as you're going along. So what I found was that I was in the travel management business, and I got in there because of the deregulation of the airline industry, and I did very, very well at that time. What I learned and what I carried, that the thing about the private sector is that you take chances. You call the shots, you dig your own graves. Okay. But in the public sector, in the U.S. government, or as an embassy leader, you are limited in some ways. But that does not mean that the real life experience in dealing with people and in sales, even as an ambassador, you're selling American policy. You're selling American goodwill. You're selling American goods to those countries. So those things translated into a phenomenal opportunity for me to express and to deliver. I mean, Fiji water. You know what Fiji water?
Yeah.
So David Gilmour came to me and said that, look, I want to expand Fiji water. He was the founder of Fiji water. But Fiji water is not a spring water, it's artisan water. It's under the ground. Yeah. So if you have to expand, you have to get more land, okay? And the Fiji government was not about to give it to them for environmental reasons and stuff like that. I carried a small bottle of Fiji water in my pocket when I went and took him along to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister said, no, you guys are not creating enough employment, you're making too much money. So bottom line, he wanted more excise duties and stuff like that. I took out a bottle of Fiji water and gave it to him and said, sir, Mr. Prime Minister, this bottle of Fiji water is an ambassador of your country. In the streets of Los Angeles, in the financial markets of New York, everybody's walking around with a bottle of Fiji water. Do you know how much publicity and how much goodwill you're creating? No amount of excise tax or duties is going to compensate that. So long story short, David Gilmour and Fiji Water got the expansion in terms of land, in terms of port facilities, in terms of building new roads. And because there were 10 trucks going across a bridge every day. When we did the expansion, there were 100 trucks moving. So you can imagine. So for this little success of Fiji Water, I'd like to take a little claim.
Of course. No, you should get the credit. I mean, it's in every kind of yoga and spinning studio as well. So
yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk a little bit about identity and working in policy and politics. It's obviously a hot topic these days and a partisan topic too. But I joined government service after 9/11 happened. And so for me, I had always felt like this identity of growing up in a Muslim culture as a Muslim American was something that was thrown onto me, even though it was something that was part of my life. It wasn't anything that I advertised, and I couldn't avoid it going into foreign policy and working on South Asia after 9/11. And it manifested in my career in various ways. Like there were certain impediments, like being from Pakistan, in working on Pakistan, like I couldn't be posted there, right? And all these, and by the way, Don helped me get rid of that restriction, and I was able then to visit and stuff. So thank you, Don. But and you can get around those things with the right relationships and the right mentors. In my case, what was it like being the first Muslim American ambassador before 9/11? That was a different world. Like, what did it mean to you, first of all? And what was your experience like dealing with other people? And if I can put my American Pakistan Foundation hat on, like we're all about building bridges and helping people understand where we're coming from. How is it a building bridges opportunity for you?
Well, first of all, I think that that me being the first American Muslim ambassador of South Asian origin was something very unique. I was very humbled by it, very honored by it. And when the news came out that is the reason, that is one of the things that is going to happen after your appointment, I was really flabbergasted. I didn't realize that before me there was no other Muslim ambassador. I really didn't know that. And so this is an accidental credit that I got. But my clearance took 11 months. And this was after the Tanzania and the Nairobi embassy bombing. And so they turned me upside down 50 times, to make sure that there was nothing they could find. And I understand that. I don't hold any grudges against it because, of course, security and everything is paramount. And being the first American Muslim, there were some trepidations amongst certain quarters, and I can understand that. So I lived with it, but it took 11 months to the point that my wife said, if you want to live in Fiji so much, why don't you buy a place there and we'll go and spend 6 months every year? I mean, our life was on hold. Schools, I have 4 kids, all school-going kids. Their life was on hold, and they didn't want to go to begin with. The other thing I wanted to tell you was my agrimo, which is the thing that General Rambuka, who was the prime minister, sat on it.
So explain to the group what agrimo is.
Agrimo is basically an acceptance by the host country of the ambassador as the personal representative of the president. So it is kind of it's a diplomatic jargon, but it is basically the host country says, you are okay to come here to represent your country. That's agrimo. It's a French word. So strangely enough, Shamela, of course, we found out, and I'm not going to go into details how we found out, but Rambuka and the foreign minister is having a conversation that we cannot allow this guy to be ambassador here because we have an election coming. The Indo-Fijians are there, and he's going to throw a monkey wrench into the whole darn election process. When President Clinton heard this, he went ballistic. He went ballistic. You can blame him for anything, but when it comes to race, he has zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. He told in no uncertain term that either Osman Siddique goes as ambassador to Fiji, or Fiji is never going to get an ambassador for the rest of my term. And I will downgrade that embassy and do all consular work in Canberra. Within 7 days, the agrimo came. So yes, being the first might sound very sexy, but also it can be a little bit, you have to navigate it very carefully also.
Absolutely. So we have several questions already in the Q&A box. So I'm going to just turn to some of these. We've got some great ones. Perry Bloom is asking, after completing your undergraduate studies at Indiana University and then getting your MBA, why didn't you return to Bangladesh to help with building of the new nation?
Well, again, there are many reasons why people emigrate. And one of the reasons is opportunities. I mean, I could have gone to Bangladesh, but Bangladesh was in ruins at that time. It was, they were coming out of this civil war. Opportunities were different. And the kind of education I had, I did not realize that I would be able to go and do something productive there. My goal was not to get an immigration right away in America. I wanted to work and get an experience with a Fortune 500 company. I thought that, and they allowed you, after you get a student visa, they give you a work experience visa, and I applied for that. Because I really thought that the program that I went through in marketing and sales and business economics, if I could get a practical experience with a Fortune 500 company, that would be absolutely incredible. And I would learn more. Actually, I did learn more in my work than what I did in the grad school. So that was the reason. Things turned in such a way that I got some family, then I fell in love here. So, so there was a lot of incentives for me to stay.
So to the grad students on the call, just pretend you didn't hear what he said, that you learned more at work than in grad school.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is a distinction with the practical learning and the book learning and with your peers. I mean, you learn different things, frankly. And
Correct.
there is no match for what you learn on the job at the State Department. Like without a doubt, right? Because
yeah.
Sometimes it's, something has happened and you have 2 weeks to get smart on it. And sometimes you have 20 minutes to get smart, right?
Correct. You're absolutely correct.
And that comes out in your book, no doubt. So I'm going to go to another question, but tell us about your family and the experience of having to take them overseas for this new assignment. Because there's a lot of trepidation from young folks sometimes about careers overseas, because it makes family life disjointed, or kids they get their education gets disrupted. Like, there's lots of practical questions people have about it.
It is so true. It is so true. And I can give you a snapshot of what happened to me. I moved to McLean, Virginia in 1974 and never moved anywhere. And this is 1999 I'm talking about. I built a family, I built a livelihood, I built a political career, all in Washington, D.C. My 4 kids the age ranged from 6 to 16. So you can understand how rambunctious they are. They have their friends, they have their cousins. And when they found out that we are planning to go to Fiji, they looked in the globe. At that time, there was no Google. So they looked in the atlas and everything and said, where's goddamn Fiji? So they came to me and told me that, Dad, we are not going. We don't want to go in that little island. It took us a lot of persuasion, but they knew that they had no choice. And once you go there, there's also a big cultural shock, And one of them I mentioned, it was the biggest diplomatic crisis that I first faced. And that is the uniform. It was an international school, and the uniform is that skirt, sulu, they call it. Both boys and girls wear the same thing. So one day this was my first week and I'm up to here with a lot of things that I'm learning. I'm on fast track. All my 4 kids are crying. They want to come back home. I said, what happened? They're swollen eyes. I said, Dad, we're not going to wear this skirt, okay? We're going home tomorrow. We want to go back to our Langley school. So I said, give me 2 days, could you? So I went to the principal. He was a Peter Crystalidis. He was an Aussie guy. And I said, Peter, I'm having a big problem at home. Would you make an exception? He said, I'll make an exception. He made an exception. After a week, I come back, they're all wearing sulu and laughing. He said, La, we stuck out like a sore thumb. We didn't want and actually in this weather, it's okay. So the kids had a great learning experience also. At the end, once they are there, they saw how lives are lived there. And it's a heck of an education for them.
Yeah, it fast tracks them on this path of becoming global citizens, right? And even
absolutely.
And if it's a pre-Google world, like in our post-Google world, everyone is a global citizen, and there's so much tension around it, right? And
correct.
Having that is a great gift you gave them. So, okay, let's go to some more questions. So, Amal Jamshed is asking, do you think immigrants can still pursue an American dream today? What are your hopes for immigration policy in the future?
Well, I think started by saying that this country was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of immigrants. I can name you a dozen successful immigrants who have played a pivotal role in creating and manufacturing many, many things. But right after 2016 election, I was asked to speak to a group of students at George Washington University. And these were immigrant students. Some were non-immigrant, but most of them were immigrant, first generation or born here. They had this gloom and doom in their face because they were told that this current, the Muslim ban is starting and all those things, you understand? So there was so much scare and uncertainty in their face. I looked at them, and when my turn came to speak, I stood up and I said, "What's wrong with you guys? You're in America, okay?" And then I went into my pocket and flipped the Constitution and opened the 14th Amendment, which was passed in 1868, which said that every American born on natural life have all equal rights, including slaves. So I said, guys, those 50 stars on the flag belongs to you as much as it belongs to the President of the United States. So I'm just telling you that there's a notion that if you that the immigrant dream is we have issues we need to solve. We need to have a comprehensive immigration policy. But building a border wall is not the answer. There are other ways of making sure that there are legalized immigration, and those who want to stay here and who are here, their rights cannot be challenged. The Constitution has our back. And please, I implore all of you to visit the United States Constitution. It's a small reading, but it is phenomenal for your understanding of your citizenship.
It makes me think of many conversations I also had at the time, and I continue to have. And one thing I like to remind people is that these things that concern us about immigration and the way minorities are getting treated, they didn't just come out of nowhere in 2016, right? These are the culmination of decades of systematic discrimination, racism, unresolved policies, and also just cultural issues. And at any given decade, you can go back and find something that was in immigration policy that was exclusionary, that was racist, and we may not have 100% overcame that, but it becomes part of who we are. And I think the important thing is to not forget our history and to constantly challenge what we know, and also just to make it better. And that's what I love about the work of diplomacy, is that it's not about fighting it out, it's about talking it out. And that is even harder in some cases, but it's much more constructive. Even when you feel like you failed, it's also a long game, right?
Correct.
So it takes a long time to get there. Okay, so good. Let's go to a few more questions. Ben Deese is asking, Ambassador, what do you think the State Department can do to help make recruitment to the Foreign Service more equitable? There's a lot of kind of good work that needs to be done on diversity and making the Foreign Service more representative of American demographics, which I believe he's speaking at that, and also probably promotion potential of minorities, et cetera.
My stint at the State Department, I saw a lot of effort, as Shamila, you might have also noticed, to address the issue of diversity. There was a lot of effort. And if anybody wants to give the FSO, Foreign Service exam, I think if you are a minority, they looked, you already got some points, in your admission. So it has taken time, and it'll still take some more time. But during the Clinton and the Obama administration, which I'm aware of, efforts were made diligently to make sure that minorities participate in the process as much as possible. They, in different seminars, if you went there, they used to say openly, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, you have a leg up in the admission process. So we are not there yet. It's not perfect. We don't get a 10 out of 10, but we are making progress.
Thank you. Actually, let me just add before I go to the next question for Ben. I think that there's a bigger structural challenge for us, and it has to do with foreign policy not being viewed or not being understood by most of Americans. Like, it doesn't affect their daily lives in the way that it affects our lives, those of us that are really interested in it and want to go work in it. The local nature of foreign policy is really hidden to a lot of Americans, even though there are connections, you know, like there's strong relationships between foreign governments and like the city of Los Angeles and the city of New York. And there's a lot of business that gets done, like Iowa and China, right? Soybeans. Mm-hmm. And so, but not everybody is acutely aware of the contributions and the impact. And so I think if it were a much more socialized subject in our culture, then we would actually have more kinds of people going into the foreign policy space as well. So at least that's my big picture dream.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you for that good question, Ben. Zoya Sithar is asking, what advice would you have for those hoping to become ambassadors and diplomats in the future, especially in an increasingly polarized world?
It's a very good question, Zoya, but because I think that the Foreign Service is an area that can truly represent America when we talk about smart power and all those things. Everybody who joins the career service, becomes a Foreign Service personnel, does not become an ambassador. Only 20% maybe the careerists become ambassadors. Out of a pool of 175 ambassadors at any point of time, there are about 30% of them are political ambassadors. So I think joining the Foreign Service, you have to have a goal, and the goal has to be an ambassador. But you can serve in many other areas which are equivalent to what you are doing as ambassador. Whether you're in trade, whether you're in commercial, economic, intelligence, national security, it's a worthy thing. And when you join politics like me, and if you make good contribution to the president, you can be an ambassador also. So that is a very, very nice route to take. But keep your eye on the prize, and if you do that, you'll succeed either way.
It's very good, candid advice you're all getting, by the way. I mean, that's very well put, very well put. So, and Don Kemp is just adding a comment. Thank you to Shamaila and Usman for the kind words. I have great memories of both of them. So,
I got to tell you, Don and I were on our trip with President Clinton on his first ever state visit to Bangladesh and India.
Okay.
And we were sitting next to each other on that military jet, from awesome. New Delhi to Dhaka.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, and Faraz Ansari's question is, you mentioned that people should go into public service to fix problems they see in government. In your experience, did you feel like your position as ambassador gave you the latitude to fix issues you saw in government?
Well, when you're an ambassador, of course, you don't have to deal with what's our internal domestic policy. So I was implementing policies as a U.S. policy. But when the coup took place, my job took an added dimension. As you said, I had to throw away the pina colada and just keep the flag on in one of my hand. But what is the beauty of America? What is our value system? It's democracy. It's freedom. And if I could inculcate in those people that these are worthy of fighting, I succeeded. Let me give you one example. There was a hostage situation where the hostage coup leader, George Speight, he took the entire cabinet in the parliament, including the prime minister, the whole cabinet. One day, around 10 o'clock, I got a call from my DCM saying that they have taken an American journalist as a hostage. Believe me, I said that this is not going to go well for them. I am a person of First Amendment. Freedom of press is branded in my heart today. And if they mess around with an American journalist, tell them all hell is going to break loose on their head. Mm-hmm. So Ron said, sir, what are we going to do if they don't listen? I said, just tell it to them. It was a total bluff, okay? Doesn't matter. So he went on this loudspeaker and he said, if the American journalist is not released within 20 minutes, all hell is gonna break loose on your head. And he was released. So being a student of political science and politics of America, I understand what values we have to portray. And I was so determined to make sure that that democratic governance, upholding of human rights, women's rights, these are policies that I could easily convert there.
Thank you. Thank you for that great question for us. Memuna Gassama is asking, what were diplomatic negotiations like after the coup in Fiji, and what kind of role did the US play?
Yeah, again, Fiji is not one of those top G7 countries. So there's normally not a lot of heavy diplomatic weightlifting over there, but the coup changed the situation because many foreign interests like the Chinese and others were very, very interested to stake their ground there during this commotion. You know, Fiji is the backyard of Australia and New Zealand. And they play a predominant role there in economics and in politics and everything. But during this coup, something very strange thing happened. While I was visiting the civic leaders, the military leaders, the political leaders, they came close to me and said, Mr. Ambassador, these Aussies and Kiwis, they have they're economic colonialists here. They don't have the best interests of us in their mind. You Americans are neutral. You have no other interest but to make sure that we go on the right path. So we want you to work hard. So I took that lesson and I got the support of my National Security Council. I got the support of the of state and others, and I pursued those things to the point that when my term ended with Bill Clinton's, as I said before, I was asked to stay on. So American leadership counts. Even in an island nation like Fiji, I think it matters, especially if you have the backing of a White House which believes in all those things.
Mm. So related to what you just said about American leadership, what now of American leadership? Given that you know, the Trump administration is has been pulling away from the world in many ways, rhetorically, in terms of development funding, engagements, etc. How do we come back from this, or is this just like a little blip, or is it something larger?
You know, in my book, I talk about Bus USA. Bus USA is a bus with very big, strong shock absorbers. We are going now, we're hitting some real big bumps. We are falling all over each other. We're falling off our seat, but ultimately because of the strength of our shock absorber, our bus will stabilize. Our shock absorber is the strength of our Constitution. And I think this might be a blip, but it's gonna go away. And I in my heart of heart, I am very encouraged that the American people will do the right thing to make sure that the bus gets steady again. Going back to this example, that American journalist whom we helped get out, in today's atmosphere, in today's discussion, when the press is labeled as the enemy of the press, enemy of the people, and they're disgusting. Yesterday, he said something that I don't want to even repeat here. The president, I mean. Do you think if my DCM went on the loudspeaker and told the coup leaders to release our American journalists, do you think they would believe us? Number one, or do they respect us, or would we have the moral courage to say this? So you know, leadership matters, and I think that we will steady our course. We will move on to better areas.
And it only works, this is to the attendees, it only works if people like you also stay in the game, right? When things get hard, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Never give up. Never give up on America. And I might sound very simplistic, but coming from a war-torn country where I saw absolute disaster, and coming to a new country where every street corner I turned was a new block. I didn't have any sugar daddies when I started my business. Banks all had laughed at me when I went there. I made it.
Yeah.
Perseverance.
Yeah. So one more audience question, and I have a quick one, and we'll turn it back to Abby. With Aisha Sattar is asking, with the election upon us and so much uncertainty about the future, would you have some words of advice for kids with family ties to the Indo-Pak region, to South Asia? How should they maintain their allegiance with the United States, since they're all American, but appreciate the love they and their families have for their countries, the countries their parents came from?
You never have to compromise between your motherland and your homeland. Never. You know, America does not allow you to do that. We celebrate our diversity, e pluribus unum, out of many one. You know, we are a family here, and our family has diverse background and culture. I still have people that I know who live in Karachi, who are my family, and I have people who live in Dhaka. I maintain a relationship with them, and you are not a traitor if you have friends and family in your home country. You're not. You're still an American patriot. And Obama had his family in Kenya. He was the president of the United States. Melania Trump parents are still in Slovenia. Doesn't matter. As long as you owe allegiance to the flag here, do not deviate from that. Make sure that you understand the principles of citizenship in this country, and make sure that you abide by the rules and play the game accordingly. You have nothing to worry.
Yeah, I always tell people, I get asked similar questions, and I always tell people, you don't let other people decide who you are. Yeah. You decide who you are, right? Exactly. And these external narratives are just that, they're external. So process them, confront them, deal with them, but they don't define you. Right. So my last question to you, and then we'll turn it back over to the student organizers, is how does one get involved in politics? Because your path is so interesting, and it's you were in business, but you were still interested very much in policy issues and politics, and then you did get involved in politics, and that accelerated your rise. But how if somebody wants to get involved in politics and take that path of being political, what advice would you give them?
My advice is start at the local level. I mean, if you live in Montgomery County or in Fairfax County, get involved with the local supervisor election, district council election, school election, and build a network of friends and families. Because it's important that you understand the local politics where you live. And of course, once you do that, and if you live in Washington, D.C. area, there are people who live in Michigan today, okay? It's a different ballgame. But if you live in Washington area, water flows across the Potomac to Washington all the time. And you are in a very, very good position to make yourself known. I mean, for me, I met Ted Kennedy at a Democratic event. And we hit it off because he was involved in the Bangladesh issue, and he really wanted to hear from me. You might not have a similar experience, but you will meet people. You will find people, because Americans in general are gracious people. In general, they want to help people. They embrace somebody who's struggling, who's trying to make it big. They do. In general, they do. So don't give up on that, on the goodness of the American people.
You have some wonderful stories and vignettes of American kindness.
That is true. Many.
Corners. Yeah, it was lovely to read those. Everyone, you should definitely read the book, because it will make you feel very good about, despite everything that's happening in the world, like it's very heartfelt and touching and honestly written. And there's lots of these good feel-good stories about the American experience. So Ambassador Siddique, thank you so much for your leadership and for sharing your story with us and with the world. And we hope to continue telling it and living it through our own experiences. And with that, I'm going to turn it now back to Abby for closing remarks.
Thank you, Shamela, very much. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. That was really inspiring. I know everyone I've talked to so far has enjoyed it, and you are just super engaging and wonderful to listen to. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us and SAIS SAIS South Asia Club, and the Global Security and Conflict Management Club for joining us tonight. And thank you, Shamila, for moderating. You were wonderful.
It was a great honor for me. Trust me. I thank you very much. Thank all of you. Thank you, sir. Thank
Bye.
you.
Stay safe,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.